This particular episode is going to be a little bit different, as it's going to just be featuring myself. Now, it was inspired by a conversation I recently had with my coach where for the first time I said to him, I can't. I've been so open about my struggles in the past with my mental health, and I've found myself in that difficult place once again. Recording this was incredibly tough and made me feel very vulnerable, but it is something that I felt I needed to do. 2024 has been a testing year with many, many lessons learned. Although, honestly, I wish I didn't feel this way, I know with so much hard work and with the right people by my side, something special can come from it. Some of my biggest achievements have come from some of the toughest times that I've been faced with. In my heart, I really hope this episode will contribute to normalizing how we feel and enable more people to find the strength to speak out when in need. Nothing, and I really want to remind each and every one of you of this, nothing lasts forever, both good and the bad. This is just one of those bad moments in my life, which I believe will eventually turn good. This episode is the beginning of me getting myself back into the place I wish to be, both happy and in peace.
Guys, I'm incredibly proud to say that my first book, Fortune Favours the Brave, published by Penguin, is now in stores to purchase, or you can order your copy online. The book consists of 76 short lessons on finding strength in vulnerability. Adversity is something you will inevitably face in life. I wrote this book to share and showcase how to process that and what can come from it. Adversity is something we wish would never happen to us, but it does. I want you to understand, though, that it can inspire you to achieve incredible things, not just for yourself, but for others too. Everyone on this earth is born amazing at something. It is just a case of finding out what that is. Life is incredibly short and valuable, so make it count. You may find that you don't believe in your ability or fearful to test yourself. By the end of this book, I believe you will. To get yourself a copy now, it can be purchased at Waterstones, Amazon, or by simply clicking the link on my Instagram bio, Joshua_Patterson_JP now.
So this is a really unique episode, and one, I'll be honest, makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable and pretty vulnerable. And I think that's the reason why I've decided to do it. Every single week on this podcast, I get such a variety of the most amazing individuals who are so strong and have so much courage, I think, to be vulnerable with me, sometimes a complete stranger, and to all of you that listen week in, week out. And I felt like I just got to a point in my life where, rather than being the person who seems to be the voice of reason and have so much understanding, I wanted to maybe share a bit of my truth in the hope that actually I can help someone along the way. But equally, I think just to be able to maybe look back at this moment and to process it once again and see, hopefully, how far I've come from it. It's so interesting when you're talking to people, how you have these conversations and they say these things and they become triggers, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And last night I went for dinner after an event with a guy, Johnny Davies, who some of you will be familiar with. I've had him on the podcast a couple of times. He's a good friend of mine. And he was talking about the things that we do and why we do them. And he reminded me that my why was the impact that I wish to make on people, equally for himself too. And I feel like with the current state mentally that I've been in, I've sort of forgotten myself and who I am and what it was that I was trying to achieve. I needed to hear that from him, because actually I think that is what really inspired the decision to have this conversation with you guys, because that's ultimately is what I'm trying to achieve, is to, I don't know, I guess share the reality of the highs and the lows of my life, and I guess trying to make that as relatable to people as possible. I've been so vocal, I guess, over the past number of years about my previous struggles with my mental health and how much progress has been made since then. And I think if you look at the work and the challenges that I've done and achieved, there's been huge leaps since those days. And yet, somehow, I kind of find myself back, not necessarily as deep in that place as I once was, but I still find myself nonetheless in a place that I'm really struggling with. As far as my mental health goes, I think this is probably one of the hardest periods I've been through in a very, very long time. And I don't know why. I think even admitting that right now to a lot of you is something I find incredibly difficult to do. And I think that's just because of maybe where I think psychologically I've positioned myself in terms of, being a parent to a beautiful little girl and, writing a book and ultimately trying to lead the way in how people can think and feel. And it almost feels a little bit like I'm a fraud. And I think that's probably why I've become so introverted in so many ways, where on a daily basis, I keep having people reaching out to me, asking me why I'm not documenting more of what it is that I'm doing every day, and why I'm not celebrating the successes I have. And I think it just got to that point where I kind of had to look within and with reflection started to realize that I think it really does come down to that, is that right now I feel like I'm a fraud. Now I know that's not the truth, but this is the power of the mind, both the good and the bad, and how it can make you feel. And right now my mind is so turbulent within that I'm just losing myself. And so it makes it so hard to process pretty much anything. Now, I'm in a very different situation than what I was all those years ago at a much younger age, where I felt so isolated. Right now, I couldn't have a more supportive and empathetic group of friends and family and colleagues around me that have just been such a beacon of light. They really have. And so much more understanding, and the communication for me has just been the most prominent part, I think, that is sort of really getting me through this stage in my life. And I'm still trying to navigate where I guess the light is at the end of this particular tunnel. And I think it's that fear of it never ending. I always I think in my mind accepted that mentally there was always going to be struggles, but I felt like I'd found the formula that was going to enable me to fight it and hopefully one day maybe even overcome it. And that was this huge realization of the power of communication, of nutrition, of fitness. And right now I'm in that position where I am communicating, I am eating well, I am being active, and it's not making things any better. And I think that's what's scaring me more than anything, because I don't want to be in this position anymore. Um, and I think, again, I talk about it a lot, not so much comparison is the thief of joy, but I think comparison in general, where, right now I'm so blessed with the opportunities that I have in life, and life could not give me more. In all honesty, I've had more than enough than what I deserve, to be honest with you. And I think that's probably why sometimes it's quite hard to be vocal in these situations, because there are so many people in this world who are struggling so much more, and I think going through so much more. And I guess it's again, I don't know. It's a case. I feel like I'm silencing kind of myself in this situation, because I don't know. Maybe fear of judgment. Like I said, the power of the mind, isn't it? How it makes you think these things, and in reality, it's all relative. And I've said this so many times to so many different people, where I seem to be helping a great deal of people and articulating myself in a way that really can be heard. And yet, for some reason, I'm not hearing myself. And I just don't understand it, in all honesty. And I've been doing therapy for so many years, and I've processed so many of my traumas and battles that I've been faced with in life. And yet I'm still sat here right now. And that in itself, I think, is triggering because in my head, psychologically, I'm meant to be much further on than I am, and I probably am. In all honesty, I think it's much better for someone from outside to be able to see these sorts of things and rationalize it. But when you find yourself in this turmoil, it really is difficult to process it. And I think with men's mental health coming up, it feels like this conversation just came at the right time to be had. Um, because although I'm sat here right now and I am struggling and things have really been quite difficult, the reason why I feel more optimistic than I have before is because I know I've been here and I've come out of it many times, and I know this situation will be no different. Before, there was no reason to live. There has never been more reason to live than I have to this day. And for that, this life is worth fighting for. I think also, I keep reminding myself every day I wake up and I have a photo of India by my bed. And you just want to make sure that you're the best version of yourself for your child. And um, I think it's this situation I guess I find myself in, being a parent, where there is so much fear out of that vulnerability. You know, people have a view on everything these days, and I think when a parent is in a really fragile state, is that fear of what people will think of you, and maybe the repercussions. But I think, not that I need to justify it or necessarily validate it to myself, but it's a case of, to be clear, like any struggles that I go through will never ever have an impact on my child. I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is that I think I was exposed to a lot of that throughout my childhood, what my parents had been through. And I wanted to break that cycle. I wanted to ensure that not necessarily the things that I go through, I go through in silence. But it's a case of, sometimes there's the right time to discuss these sorts of things and articulate it in a way that can be processed by your child, but not become a weight on that child's shoulders. For me, it's so important to remain that beacon of strength, that pillar, sorry, of strength around her. And when the timing is right, she'll have an understanding of her daddy, and kind of some of the struggles that he's been through. But that time's not now. She's far, in my opinion, far too young for something like that. Even even speaking to you guys in this way right now, it's just such a form of therapy. I don't know, I guess I've just kind of as I said, put myself on maybe this pedestal slightly, and prioritized so many other people, and quite clearly I've kind of maybe been neglecting myself in this process. And even though I've kind of been giving myself periods of time to really get through these sorts of things, the work necessarily hasn't been that effective. I think the major thing for me kind of all started early 2024, this year, where I got salmonella poisoning and was written off completely. I don't think I've been that ill in such a long time. For about 3 weeks, I'd lost an awful lot of weight. And what really was a struggle about that for me was that I'd worked so tirelessly for a goal that I'd set myself. And, there's very few times when I've set my mind on something in life where I haven't succeeded. And I could kind of see this slipping through the cracks, and it was completely out of my control. This year was kind of like the year that I was going to take off from challenges. I've committed my life and I've sacrificed so much for something that I love. But at some point, you have to give the body a rest. And that's why I really just wanted to focus on the marathon distance and not ultras, just to continue to give myself something to focus on, because I think that's when I struggle the most, is when I don't have that structure or something to strive for. So it was a case of not entirely switching off, but just reducing, I guess, the level of work I needed to do. And I had worked incredibly hard for this particular goal, which was to run the LA Marathon for a personal best time. And as you can imagine, post poisoning, I just went into it, half the person that I had hoped to be. And it turned out to be an incredibly challenging marathon where I sustained some injuries too. And, we're in the latter part of the year right now, and I'm worse than I was then. And I think that's why this year on so many levels has been so incredibly challenging, where so much has gone into it. I've done everything by the box. I've ticked everything that I possibly can. I've seen as many specialists as there possibly are. And yet for so long, so many of them haven't had the answers. And my health has just been diminishing bit by bit. And again, in comparison to many, many other people out there with the conditions, this isn't even comparable. But again, it's all relative. And this is something that I'm not particularly used to. This has never happened to me before. And as I've mentioned, I've been eating well, I've been prioritizing sleep. I've been continuing with my conditioning. I've been listening to everything the specialists have answered, and yet still things have not improved. And the fact that it's now starting to have such a detrimental impact to my performance, and I guess the goals that for so long have kept my mind at peace, when you strip that away, that scares me, because that's what levels me out. And I don't know what the future has in store. Normally I have an answer for these sorts of things, but whatever condition I have seems to be so unpredictable. And it's got to the point now where there are a few unbelievable people that I've been introduced to that are starting to give me a bit more hope as to potentially finding out what this can be and if there's a solution to resolve it. Because for me, the sooner I can get back to, my former self, the better, in all honesty. Because I think that's just one of the biggest fears, is just, feeling this way for the rest of your life. It's horrible. And in my head, I'm such a positive person. Humor is such an instrumental part of my being and life. And I'm losing that side of me, and I don't like it. And I find myself apologizing a lot to my family, to my friends, to my work colleagues about my behavior and, the mental state that I find myself in, because I hate impacting other people with the way that I am. That's just the one thing about myself. I've always kind of kept that side incredibly close to myself, but it's getting to the point where it is a struggle, and I am becoming more expressive to those around me so that there is more of an understanding of what's going on. And I think to anyone that is listening, what you can take from that is that I just think no matter how bad it gets, communication is just so, so important. The difference a simple conversation can have with any member that you decide to speak with, even if they don't necessarily understand what it is that you're going through, just by having that awareness, I mean, just see how it can change the course of your life, in all honesty. Even people that I have hired to come and work with me, being able to be transparent with them that, you know, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but equally there's a mutual understanding that that's what works on both sides of the spectrum, I guess. I think one of the biggest learnings that I'm going to be taking from this year is just to be incredibly mindful when making decisions, what your current state actually is. Because after LA Marathon, the goal this year has always been to run my fastest marathon. And I don't think the timing of that was appropriate. If anything, I had to listen to the body, which was to take some time off to recoup in every way that I possibly could. And there's a part of me that thinks that I've actually probably added to the issue, if anything, rather than trying to improve it. So my ambition at the end of this year was to take on Valencia Marathon. And the inspiration behind this particular episode was from a conversation that I had with Chris Taylor, one of my closest friends and my running coach, where every single week I message that guy with a new world record idea, something to break, something to set. And the best thing about our relationship is that he takes everything I say with a pinch of salt, because the ideas just get bigger and wilder and more unique, but sometimes we can laugh them off. But that's the beauty of creation. You know, when you finally execute one of those dreams, it's just the greatest feeling in the world, which we have shared together many times. But this particular phone call was the first time where I called him up, and some may see that as defeat, where I said to him, I can't do this. And I've never done that before. And that was a really hard conversation to have, where I had to admit to myself that something that I had set myself wasn't necessarily going to be achieved. Now, that doesn't mean ever. It just means not right now. And so I have to kind of maybe give myself some advice to just be patient with this process, however long it may be, whatever this illness is that I have. It may last another month. It may last another 6 months. It could last a year. I don't know. Fingers crossed it could end tomorrow. But until that is resolved, there is absolutely no rational reason why I continue applying these pressures to myself. It doesn't help me. It's not going to help you. I think it's just detaching myself from putting all my eggs almost into one basket, where these challenges are one of the few things in my life that I've said before just enables me to just maintain this peace in my mind. And by not having that, it's trying to understand how I can channel this surge of energy that I get into something constructive. I'm 35 now, and I've been trying to process this for, it feels like almost 20 years, and I'm still asking myself these questions. And, you know, some of you that are listening to this right now, maybe I'm able to identify with what I'm saying. Some of you, this might be the first time ever, but I feel like these sorts of conversations can be so beneficial for the person and for the people that are listening to. You know, I really hope that this isn't going to be a weight on your shoulder, although this is an incredibly deep and in-depth conversation about what it is I'm going through. You know, I just wish that there were so many conversations I've had with my therapist that in a weird way, I wish more people could hear, because I think that's what normalizes them. And it's what makes them relate to you, so that when they go through these struggles, it's okay. Because I think we keep saying that to people, is it's okay to struggle, but I think it's still really incredibly hard for people to identify with what okay actually is, you know? And I think with this challenge space, I've built a reputation over the past number of years of accomplishing some of the most physically extreme challenges that any human on this earth has done. And yet I'm sat before you right now telling you that I'm not okay and I am struggling mentally. And that's an incredibly hard thing to do. But following on from that conversation I had with Johnny, if what I'm saying right now can improve one individual's life and even more save it, then with the platform that I have, it couldn't be more important that I share these moments with you. And like I said, life is about peaks and troughs. And I'm just in an incredibly deep trough right now, but I do have the tools to get myself out of it. And like I said, the most important thing is to try and remain as optimistic as you can. But equally, don't forget these moments. these moments are so incredibly valuable and they're so important to me because when I take these challenges on and you see the charities that we align with, and although I come from a place of privilege, from an emotional point, I couldn't connect more to you or to the charity itself. It comes from an incredibly deep place where I know how it feels to feel down and out. I know how it feels to want to end things. And it's because of that privilege that I have, and understanding that there are so many people out there that find themselves in a position where they're struggling the way that I am, but they don't have those resources in order to get themselves out of that hole. And that's why we're losing far too many people, not just within this country, but worldwide. And that has to stop. And so, the work I do has got to continue. And, I think that's why it's been a bit of a struggle, is that I'm not necessarily being the most articulate or efficient with the things that I'm doing in order to spread that message to the people that I feel so deeply passionate about. Could be you right now who's listening to me. And I just don't have the answers for it right now. I don't know how I'm going to get myself out of this, but I will. And I think that's the most important thing to think about, is that there is an out to this. And the reality is, at some point in my life, I'm probably going to find myself back in this position again, but there'll be a solution for that too. And as I said, I just think I've got the most amazing people with me. And the difference, I think, this time round to any other time I've been through is that, my biggest inspiration, you'll get this a lot from a parent, is genuinely my daughter. She gives you a reason to live, to wake up every day, to be grateful for every single moment. Um, to see that smile on her face is something that is just worth waking up for. And, to see them grow up and fulfill all the dreams that they have in their life. Um, and I really hope that as she gets older and she's probably going to see and hear these sorts of moments, it's going to normalize the struggles that she goes through, um, knowing that her daddy has gone through them many, many times, and I'll still be there to tell the tale, whatever that age may be. So I think I've done this today to give myself the motivation I need. Because I think in life, what I've come to realize is that when you're struggling, as lucky as I am to have the people I have around me, you can't always lean on them. The only person that is ever going to get you out of that hole will always be yourself. And that's where you've got to be accountable. You have to ask yourself that question. You're struggling, but do you want to continue to struggle? And if the answer is no, you have to change that narrative and the direction that you're going in. And that's the choice that I'm making today, is that I don't want to feel this way. And like I said, I have no idea how long this is going to continue for, but from this day on, I have got to make those decisive decisions in order to improve things. And so it's just one foot in front of the other. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll look back on this, and in a weird way, I'll be grateful for it, because I feel like these moments is where I get my greatest inspiration from. When you meet individuals and you hear their stories, you just connect with them on such a level. As a person, I just think you grow as an individual so much more. I think when you understand your why in life, and I feel like on many occasions I have, that is just the most powerful gift any person on this earth, I feel, can possibly have, because it just gives you a passion and a purpose like no other. And to find myself in this position once again, I truly believe is going to lead to something remarkable. And I really hope life changing, not just for myself, but for many, many other people. I've committed my life to people and planet for so long now, and long may it continue. But right now, it feels like the one person I really need to focus my attention on is myself. And then once I get that back on track, we can get back to doing the things that I love and including as many of you as I possibly can along the way. So this isn't goodbye. This is just the beginning.